Get you going.
Bringing forward next
All
year.
right, we're good to go.
That's them getting ready for the SB.
Okay, all right, we are going to we're gonna let David do a roll call. And let the meeting begin.
Okay, Michael Diven,
Here.
Andrew Grove,
Here.
Stacy Hill,
Here.
Tom Langston, Shirley McElhatton,
Here.
Kristen Reisinger,
Here.
Harry Wrestler, Amanda Ross, Shelley Saba, Ian Smith,
Here.
Stefan Strautmeyer. Concludes the roll.
Excellent, okay. Do we have any citizens' comments?
I see none online or in person.
Okay, so we are no to that. All right, next up, has everyone read the meeting minutes from March the 2nd? And if so, did you have any changes, modifications, or additions? I read through it and it seemed pretty thorough to me. Okay, can we have someone nominate to approve the minutes?
Make a motion.
Okay, second, and I'll second. Everybody good with that? Yes, excellent. All right, oh wait, is Mindy here?
We do not have Mindy. Wait, yes, we do. Here she comes.
Hey,
Over there in another row. They're gonna go on for another hour. Split my time, man.
We're ahead of time because we are ready for the commissioner
Okay.
report. I was like, okay, wait, we don't have Mindy now.
Can you all hear me okay? Okay, so I'll go with like one maybe boring, maybe interesting item. That's a big budget item that we vote on every year for my first item. And then I'll spend most of my time kind of talking about the advisory board transition plan, which you're probably a lot more interested in that one. So that the road resurfacing and restructuring program is an annual program in Mount Lebanon. We spend about roughly 3 million of our $50 million budget. So it's a large budget expense. And I want to talk about it with as many people as possible because that's, so you're aware, that includes street resurfacing, which is a mill and overlay program that if you are lucky enough to have your street resurfaced, that only takes a couple weeks and you get a nice new street. But every 20 to 30 years, we have to completely reconstruct it with full depth asphalt, and that's a much longer process. And that's the really annoying one where it happens in stages and is torn up for the whole freaking summer. Yeah. If you're lucky, it's only the summer. But it does result in a street that lasts at least 3 years. So far, we haven't really had to reconstruct a full depth asphalt street. We've just been able to resurface it maybe the last 60 years. So $3 million, we decided what streets are going to be resurfaced and reconstructed. And that went out to bid. We got the bids back, chose the lowest bidder, and everything will be posted on the website if it's not already. So you can see what streets are on and what streets are not on this year. That does include a little bit of sidewalk money, a little bit of curb money. And anytime there's any stormwater work that we can improve the infrastructure of or the curbs of, we'll do that at the same time. It obviously is cost savings. We'll sometimes pick up some ADA, some accessibility ramps and improve those as well at the same time too. Just makes sense. Okay, that's the point.
I have one
Oh,
question.
good.
Do we publish what streets are being done at any given point so we can try and
Yes.
meander through?
Drop off. It's been fun. Ray and all of those.
Yes,
Like
on our website, all the municipal managed streets are listed on there with the timelines and those are
Beautiful.
updated. But that doesn't include the utilities,
Right.
the water,
Right.
the cable lines that are running down Bower Hill forever, the telephone poles, and we get very little warning about that too. So
Yeah.
sometimes we'll send out leave alerts if it's a big deal. Yeah.
Quick comment that I think will be helpful, it's related. If you haven't signed up for Levo Alert, you should go on our website and do that. You can pick all kinds of categories. The roads were just Levo alerted this week.
Okay.
And it would, gave you the link to the website and all the roads that are getting redone. So it's really helpful. I send them out like, for example, I'll say, the Sports Advisory Board agenda has been posted to the website. So if you click the category of, public meeting updates, you'll get stuff like that. You can do rec programs, cancellations, community special events.
Right, we could check.
I feel like not a lot of people know about it, but we've had it for years, so
It-
you definitely want to do that.
Yeah, I definitely get the Levo alerts. It's just, I'm not sure I have the right ones. to
The right
check, So I have to
category.
go back and check those. So
And you can choose text or email, one or the other. And then certain emergency alerts will come to you whether you check anything or not. So if there's an emergency in your area, you're getting a call, whether you signed up or not. It's a very helpful service. Sometimes like when services go down, like we might lose internet in the rec center and or power, and I need to tell you that all rec programs are canceled and I can't do it from my system. I would be able to do it through Levo Alert. So, and if it's a municipal wide event, like 4th of July, let's just say there's a tornado, I'm not gonna be able to reach everybody quick enough. So I can do a Levo Alert from my phone. I could do it at home. So it's a really good service.
So David, can I ask you like a really stretched question about Levo Alert?
Yeah.
Can we use that technology to close fields in climate weather?
Well, you would need a staff person to do it for you, but yes.
Is that a trigger mechanism that we could use?
I think, what you would probably want to do, we'd have to convince somebody in emergency management,
No.
what I was just gonna say, because if, like, for the lacrosse, if we've got storms coming in and we need to shut down like Jefferson or Brafferton or whatnot, is that something that we can maybe contact?
Yeah.
You or someone at the office?
Well,
I'm saying it's more about the pending, not so necessarily that it's wet and unplayable, more that it's.
Lightning is coming.
Lightning's coming, that's what I'm
for
talking
sure.
about.
Safety, you have a pending safety.
No,
issue
that's
there.
what I'm talking about,
Public
right?
safety has done that. Like I can
Yeah.
remember in my time here, there was one time where we had this storm out of the blue that was really severe. And I ran out and closed the pool directly. I mean, I was on site. But the fire department went around like field to field. They sent out an alert, but they started going field to field to get kids off there.
Wow.
So I think we could probably talk to them and coordinate something where, because they're the ones that are here on weekends and evenings.
right,
We're not
right.
necessarily here. I mean, if I'm here, I'd be happy to do it.
Yeah,
But I just can't guarantee I'm gonna be, 24/7 on site where we do have somebody in public safety perhaps. So
We proactively do that too through our Team Snap and the sports apps that we use
Gotcha.
too. But it would also be helpful too for those of them who aren't subscribed yet or whatnot.
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah,
And, there's those public safety ones, like, I don't know about a storm, but, active
Right.
shooter, you're gonna get
yeah.
a call if that's in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Storm, maybe not, I can't say for
Right.
sure.
Like that's-
Yeah, I mean, if it's, obviously, if it's gonna put everybody in jeopardy, they're gonna do something. So just
I
couple
think
of
one was check.
tidbits.
good deal.
Right.
It's on My Lebo. If you click on our website, click on My Lebo, and then you can sign up.
I'll advertise in my neighborhood.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm sure most of us are.
All right, advisory boards, already.
Right.
So we have a lot of advisory boards. We also have authorities and we have nonprofits that we liaison to, we being the municipality and the commissioners. There's 15 or 16, depending on how you count them. That includes outreach, that includes our Mount Lebanon Partnership, that's our CDC. That includes SHACOG, Connect, et cetera. There are a few advisory boards that are required by state law, such as our planning board, and that will not change at all in how it operates or the structure of it. But there are 10 advisory boards that Mount Lebanon has created over the past several decades that will be condensed into 5 advisory boards. And just for perspective, we have way more advisory boards than any municipality that we could find on record, and it is results in what I think is some burnout and turnover from board members, because rightfully so, you feel ineffective. And don't get enough time and attention and support for your initiatives. So what we're trying to do from a perspective of what are the key initiatives and key things that our residents need and want and can advise us on as a government entity, restructure that whole program. So right now, most advisory boards consist of 7 members. You'll have 13 when it's fully staffed, I think, so a little bit, but everything's a little different, which is okay too. All the boards will be going, the new 5 will be going down to 9 members. And that will be effective April 1st of next year. So how that will happen is that Parks and Rec will combine, as you all know, our Parks and Sports will combine into Parks and Rec, as you all know. And we should talk about that and concern for that right now, or after I kind of get through some of the more logistical stuff, because I understand there's understandable concerns from all the boards about how their work's going to kind of fit in. But I'll just talk about the thought that we put in so far and how we can support this transition, because transitions are always hard. The makeup of the boards, we want some continuity or a decent amount of continuity so that the boards don't all have to start from scratch. And we have several members from this board whose terms are not expiring. And they'll, as long as they're attending on a fairly regular basis, like at least half the time, will probably automatically roll in to the new Parks and Rec board. So right now, the SAB, Sports Advisory Board, has Michael Diven, Andrew Grove, Tom Langston, Shelley Saba, Stefan Strottmeyer, that are all eligible to roll in to the new Parks and Rec board. If you don't want to, you do not have to do that. I think Parks has 1 person, Kelly, that is eligible to go in there as well. And she's amazing, has tons of relevant experience professionally. And that allows there to be, depending on how many people accept and roll over, 3, 4, a couple, 2 available positions for every board. Every board's kind of in the same similar situation. So we'll get some new people with new experience that are relevant to the board's charter, and we'll have some continuity, at least for that first year or so moving forward. So that'll be effective April 1st. It's very important that this board creates its work plan for the next 11.5 months, and we get some things done that we want to get done in this current structure that we all understand and work pretty effectively in. It's also concurrently important that we document what we do and that transitions into the new board. So what the ask is, if this is possible, because I know we all don't meet in the summer, but we could meet anyway in subcommittees or just work online over Google Docs, is that we write down the list of the current duties, tasks that each advisory board does, including annual activities. I don't know if we don't have any quasi-judicial functions, but any other required duties. And then you can go ahead and look at number 2 as well under there, to create a document detailing typical annual processes of the advisory board. So that would be our field meetings, for example. And so there's right? No,
This group doesn't run the field meetings, that's
Okay.
different.
Sorry, my bad.
Probably more like
Yeah.
prioritizing sports related projects and
CIP suggestions.
that kind
or
of stuff,
priorities.
yeah.
Okay, awesome. Sorry about that. Thank you. And in that, because it's already April, we have a meeting next month, right? And that's it. I was going to ask for a couple volunteers who wanted to take the lead in creating a shared document and dumping their initial thoughts in that, and then we can all add to that and check in on it next month. I feel like making a shared doc. And use our drive. Yeah.
I mean, I could set it up. I mean, I have no problem with that. There's a shared, like, we already have a sports advisory board OneDrive, which we've never ever used. I think it came about during the pandemic. I just never, I mean, we do our business a little differently, I think, but for this project, I think it'll be helpful. So I mean, I'd be happy to get the ball rolling. And then it's gonna be shared with you either way. But this is like our depository for all the current projects, the work plan, all the annual processes and all those kinds of things. They want them in this folder when all is said and done. And whatever you happen to be working on that's current when the board is winding down. So that way we're not going to lose it in transition.
And if you think it's easier, like if people haven't logged into it yet, like maybe we should start it in Google Docs or something and then move it over when it's.
I'm just
done.
thinking if it's gonna end up there, we
Oh,
might as well
start
all get
there.
comfortable doing it right now.
And then you can see the final product.
I mean, I'm very comfortable with the part I'm not super comfortable with is how I make sure I get you guys there. I'm used to sharing with people in our organization, people with a domain of mountlebanon.org. But I don't think it's gonna be a problem. I'll get y'all in there and we'll get rolling. And then you can comment and add and edit as you would like. Get it all finalized when we, meet maybe later. I think we can get a lot of work done. Between now and May, and then maybe enough is in place to keep you busy until, what's our next meeting after that? September. Plenty. You do that.
Oh, yeah, because it's not due until November, okay.
Yeah, I think it'll be fine.
That sounds great. So if you don't mind at
Not
least
at all.
inviting everyone and.
I assumed I would be getting it
Okay.
started.
And then you
Not-
just
not
want
a
us
problem.
to comment and put stuff.
And
Input
add,
anything.
yes. And does anybody volunteer off the cuff to just like start to fill it out? Brain dump?
Well, the other thing is, like, I have all the documents, so I'm gonna dump stuff
Okay.
in there.
So we can.
And then you guys,
Yeah, outside of
Go
the
down.
project list and maybe like the lighting and signs that I was working on, I mean. To my knowledge, that's all we really doing, right?
well, we do the annual work plan, so that's another thing. I mean. I know, like, there's some stuff that I think is gonna come up tonight that,
Okay.
is probably gonna be a hot topic moving forward. So I think there's always something new and fresh coming in, so. Yeah.
Excited, I can't wait.
All right, I like that.
Particularly in
I was just gonna- It's.
You're proposing.
I like that.
like seating.
Seeding it,
We're gonna save it for new.
We're gonna save it for new, I was just gonna say that.
Okay, so we'll do.
Just so you know. You said you were gonna add it.
That's right. Or parks and recs.
You have 7 minutes to prepare your proposal.
So
Yeah.
questions, concerns, I know that, I'll just throw out there, Parks has a lot of concerns because they sometimes see that sports and parks are at odds and fighting over the same resources. I see this as a benefit and we can fight together and then
Right.
come to the best possible solution that the commission can vote on and approve and find money for, instead of it going back and forth and never ever going anywhere.
It's gonna require
I shouldn't say
collaboration.
never ever, but you know what I mean, not never ever.
Give us an example. Example
Of things that's
fighting.
contentious. Sure, Bird Park. What should Bird Park be used for? Should it be a passive park, an active park? Should there be fields there? Should we put lighting on the field? Should we improve the parking? Some people don't even want to improve the parking. Why? I think it's because they don't want additional foot traffic. They want it more of a kind of conservation space. And it could be, it's a stream water restoration area, so that does have some merit to be a conservation space. It's also a very heavily used athletic field. And people would like bleachers and lights and maybe a different athletic surface that has better drainage. Et cetera, et cetera. Everything is, look at every part that way. But, there's actually a lot more areas where parks and sports align than they disagree. Turfing versus grass is the hot topic.
Sure.
And maybe anytime you take down a tree was gonna upset residents, not necessarily Parks Board members, because some of the Parks Board members understand better than anyone the life cycle of a tree and that they die anyway, and that maybe there's an optimal time to take it down, or you just can't keep every tree always forever. We have a tree problem in some ways because we can't afford to maintain the trees we have. So, there's a lot more areas where we are aligned, which are in the areas of how to use our parks and recreation spaces so that it best serves our residents, and how to fund that appropriately and how to maintain that appropriately and how to publicize those programs to residents and find out what programs residents most want, those kind of things. So
Would you
I think the synergy there.
envision the commonality of a solution having more potency to the commission coming out of a mixed group?
Oh, it's so much easier. So much easier. Yeah. Yeah. The political will is a big problem for some of these initiatives. And I don't, no, I'm not even necessarily speaking personally, I'm more speaking historically.
Right.
I think when, 50 people, 100 people show up at meetings and are upset, nobody wants to fund that kind of initiative or be responsible for maintaining that kind of a project. If you're a staff member, you don't want to upset who you work for or representative. But you can kind of go with the public and do have to do education and help get the buy-in and have more alliances. That is a lot, more of a slam dunk here. Even the deer culling program, was so contentious, but the Parks Board is now in full support of it from an environmental perspective and has spoken out and issued multiple statements and put things on the websites and talks to residents about it, offers people to come to their meetings where they'll talk to them about it, because we really need to manage the herd from an environmental perspective. Otherwise they wipe out trees, which has an impact on birds and and native species of bushes and plants and flowers and things like that. There's a place for deer in balance. There's nothing balancing it out. Topic.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
It's good, you speak,
Yeah.
you speak quickly, so that's the thing. There's still plenty of time.
Okay, questions or
Yeah.
concerns?
Quick question about composition of the board. So obviously, I'm here as a representative of the soccer association. So will all of the positions on that Parks and Rec board be at large?
Yes,
Okay.
100%. And then there's the possibility for liaisons. So a liaison is a non-voting member that represents another entity that comes to meetings, is an invited to meetings, can speak just like everybody else, but doesn't vote. And we might, for Parks and Recs especially, dedicate a couple meetings a year to sports liaisons.
Yeah,
Or we might have a doubly long meeting and the liaison meeting meets first and we hear from all the and then instead of appointing a specific person from
Soccer.
soccer,
Whatever, yeah.
we say, soccer, please send us someone.
Yeah, because I think it would be important if everyone would agree, like, there's various sports here. We've got tennis and football and softball, baseball and swimming. And, if we had reps with the liaison of the rectangular field sports, there's that.
I mean, Chris, I think one of the things that comes to mind is historically, it's been soccer, it's been tennis, it's been, it's been the interest of that discipline.
Yep.
And I think when you look at that, it needs to be an at-large position to the interest of the entire,
No, absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
get to be looking at holistically in terms of a particular sport. Otherwise.
I'm not looking at it as a
I'll say we
particular
as a
sport.
group, the combined group would have to, because
Absolutely.
otherwise you're gonna be battling soccer
Right.
versus the world.
No.
Shelley versus the world, right?
No, that's not what I'm saying. More, like, right now, we have like every sport represented and every surface,
Yeah, most.
almost every surface
Surfaces
represented,
would be
right?
right.
Surface, right?
I like that.
So I guess when I'm looking at this transition, I want to make sure like the fields are represented, the pool is represented, the
court,
rink,
yeah.
the rectangular field. That's all I'm saying is that,
100%,
Yeah.
100%.
in that the liaisons can be, if we have a rectangular field represented, so then we're encompassing soccer, lacrosse, football, right?
Field hockey.
And field
whatever.
hockey, sorry, yes,
Yeah.
I'm not two, I'm not two. My girl still plays. My girl still plays.
I'm waiting for that.
I know, the field hockey, I know. That's all I was just kind of, if we're thinking
I
along
think it's a
those lines.
mindset change is of where this historically been with David is it's really been about a sport more so than
Right.
the surface.
And now we're
And
gonna
don't
focus on-
forget, anyone come, we almost never have citizen comments, and I think that all of you would listen and take it, very seriously if some other sport, like let's say the Aqua Club showed up and said, well, we already have the Aqua Club, right? Golf showed up. They're not on the board, and they said, we've got this issue, can you help us out? I mean, of course, it would become a topic and it would be addressed, so any individual sport can always bring their concerns to the board, so I think that's important.
Yeah, so let's just make sure we capture that in our thoughts. Like, I know that it's a history, but then it's also like suggestions moving forward.
Agreed.
The evolution.
Yes. Yeah, you'll write that in, right?
Yeah, I'll write evolution in there for sure.
Thank you. More concerns, like you're probably asking, how do I fit in? You could reapply. You're like, no, I'm not gonna do that.
I like the sound of liaison.
Yeah,
I do too.
Perfect, you're like,
Oh, yeah.
it's not wrong. 4 meetings a year, and then whatever it is. Give your input, get out.
Right.
Yeah, sure. No, I don't know.
I think
We're gonna go into this, you know, a little more in depth at the next meeting.
Okay.
Will probably be some documents in
Yeah.
there too to start considering, so. Just,
What
it
do
took,
you
I don't know if you were like me, but I had to read that thing like twice and watch the video and I'm like, okay. I'm starting to understand what transitional board member and all these dates and
And
things. I'm
this
like,
one's on this,
wow.
and you, and you're
Right.
on this one, and
That's a lot. That was.
I still
a
didn't
big one.
understand. I watched the video. I asked a bunch of dumb questions. But now I get it. So you may ask, like the people that get to the option, have the option to move over, you may be asked for 1 year or 2 years, depending on the space. We want people to be going off in staggered terms over the 3 years. All right, questions, but well, okay, next meeting.
okay.
One more thing about boards though that we can talk about. There's also this page in your minutes.
Yes.
This is the current board composition. So we're down to 11 from 13.
Oh, yes.
We did not refill hockey and we did not refill basketball, and it's not because we didn't want to, there just weren't any applicants from those sports out there. There was no one from golf, for example. So we, the commission appointed who they could. So we're at 11, and I don't think that really changes a whole lot. We're gonna have a 6 for a quorum. Instead of 7 like we had before. What else was I gonna mention here?
We got one new person though.
We did, and that's probably a good segue to-
Yes.
to introduce Shirley McElhenney, who represents tennis. Welcome, Shirley. Did you
Thank
want
you.
to
Good to be
introduce
here.
yourself?
I'm
Also,
sure.
what's your background?
Yeah, I'm Shirley Macklett, and I know many of you. So I don't need a long introduction. I'm representing tennis. I've played tennis in Mount Lebanon for, gosh, I don't even know. My daughter's 16, so probably 14 years. And I don't know what else you need to know. I started playing paddle this year, but I see we're well represented in the paddle community.
That's
Sure.
okay. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. Don't be limited to your sport. We just had to slot you somewhere to get you in.
Right. Yeah, I get it. Yep. Well, I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, Michael is in the cube right next to you for a platform tennis.
Shirley is a national champion of platform tennis.
All right.
Yeah, my team won the worst bracket, essentially, the least experienced bracket. My team won that. Yeah, we're the champions of the losers bracket.
One, that's what counts.
Right.
Still
And
still
we had
says
a great-
national champion on the trophy. I
Right,
believe.
that's right. And we had a great time doing it. So
Congrats. That is awesome.
It's good to have you,
Awesome,
Shirley.
Shirley, thank you.
The only other thing I'll mention is, if for some reason this board felt like 11's not enough, I mean, we could always advertise and try to get those groups, but there are only 7 meetings left till
Yeah,
transit.
I was just gonna say, I don't think we need to.
We felt like it was pretty safe to just soldier on. so.
Yeah,
And if those sports have anything they need us to address, they can
raise it,
holler.
absolutely.
And this is good, so like everybody just has a reference of who is representing what, so. And I forgot that I left my little phonetic memory device there for Stefan, so I didn't mispronounce his name.
He's the only one that gets the special.
Yeah, I forgot to redact that when I made this little thing, so.
But that helps us too.
It
Well,
does, yeah.
It does.
And-
my mind wants to say Stephen, and I know that's not right, so I had to do something.
And I know our chair's not here, Amanda Ross, but we ran it by her that we would have less than 13 for this temporary period, and she was in full support, and she like, ask the board, but it works for me.
Sounds good. Okay, so are we through with
Yes,
the
everything's
commissioner
done.
report? Okay, wow. And we jumped, let's see, so we've already gone through the sports advisory board composition. We are not doing any more prioritization of sports related improvements because we all agreed to last time, so we're good on that one. And we are over to field signage.
Awesome. Was that me? Right? That's me. Okay. Bad news. I'm not, which I was kidding. So we received our request for proposal, we received a bid back from Polano and it was $27,000. We had budgeted $15,000
For the study.
for
I'm
the,
sorry.
that's unfortunately, that's kind of where we were like, also. So I personally, I have a little reservation about giving $27,000 of taxpayer money for a design guideline. But I'm willing to do it because I want to push this project forward. However, they were going into detail and I can, some of the proposal, they're giving us a little more than we originally asked for. But it doesn't include any of the park signs. It was just $27,000 for the sports and recreation signs. So,
Wow.
Is it public information?
is that,
Can we look at the proposal?
yeah, I think I
It'd be
can
interesting,
share
because I think we gave them 98% of what they needed to
the
do.
proposal.
Yeah.
That's what I.
Did you say, what does it not include? You said sports and recreation.
So it's all athletic fields,
Okay.
all sports related amenities, restroom signs,
Is it making the signs or just the design?
No, just.
We gave them
just
some.
the design.
It's just the design, it's not even the signs?
But
That's our,
but not parks.
but
So I will say, for the county parks, we are like in a process of
Mhm,
redoing all of our signs for all of our parks. And we ran into the same thing.
you did, how much was it?
I mean, it's like hundreds of thousands.
Well, that's the sit.
It's not the
Just
same
like the
amount.
county,
The county,
but
Yeah.
per
Yeah.
park, like when we got the original proposal, when they went through the signs, they were using some kind of crazy material. It was like $1,500. Yeah, it was like $1,500 a sign, and then we got it down to a different, like a composite to make it, but the design of it was.
The design was how much?
Design.
I mean, I can get you the exact thing, but it was expensive.
We have some.
That's not
design
surprising.
Really good
concepts.
graphic design classes at the high school kid.
It's all pictures of it. Where?
So what they go through, it's like, they'll have to go through, like, if you put it on this, like, you just decide what was needed. They'll look at like every angle, traffic patterns, all that, like, so that's part of what's going into it.
That's part of what's going. They're doing a lot of on-site evaluations of based on the signs we
Yeah, we've already
requested.
gone through this, yeah.
What is a 3D printer?
Exactly.
My wife's sister got my 9-year-old one. for
Yeah,
Christmas. I haven't opened it up yet.
Yeah, working.
See, like a 48-hour window.
Let's take a peep and just going, why don't we get offline and
Yeah, we can talk about it offline. So we didn't approve it.
it's
We've
ridiculous.
been going back and forth. We can cut some things out of it and get it down to maybe 20,000 right now, but it's still, a lot of money and
I've seen workers putting on the historic signs on the streets. So how far away from what you're trying to do is that? Like, where did that come from?
that's the same designer. So we're using that concept that they already have and expanding it to fields and parks.
So they're reusing it, but charging each and every entity who wants to do it.
They do have to come up with another sign design for every type of sign.
Yeah. These are more like locational and they have to get people there and,
And the rules, we included everything in there,
yeah, that's so crazy. Once you go make them.
Well, you've already got it priced out. I mean, we know it's very affordable.
But yeah, you did composite.
Super affordable.
Aluminum.
Aluminum, super
As long as you
affordable.
Yeah,
want that really is.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was an issue. I mean, it was very, very
that's
affordable.
crazy, yeah.
So yeah, let's talk offline
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it,
Yeah,
It's
like
good.
budget could do every field of every school of every elementary school, every middle school, like the budget that's been proposed and
Right.
people donors covers it all.
You're saying that they show up, they look at the placement of the sign and how traffic flows and stuff like that. So is it more of a
the
legality?
size,
issue,
no,
or-
like it's more like what size do you need from this space when you're coming off the road, you're in the parking lot, now it's on the
Standards.
field.
Yep,
And
codes,
and then, accessibility,
Yeah.
Standards as well.
mislead, like, they have to take into account if like somebody makes a wrong turn into a tree, was it the sign's fault?
Right, that's what I was going with, yeah.
So that's whether. this
I'm
is
just,
every
that's what they,
location.
that's what they'll
Okay, so
look
there's
at.
some
There's a
liability.
comedian that has a whole.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
And I don't know that would release my Lebanon from liability if they put this.
Yeah,
on.
Part of the
We have a
study,
lot of
yeah.
signs now we just put up.
Government.
All right, well, let's.
Okay, that's
So
an
that's
interesting
where
one.
it's a little bit stalled and we can talk about that.
I'd like to read that too. Wow. Okay. Comprehensive Plan Advisory Group.
There's a meeting next Thursday. We haven't had a meeting in a couple months. So there's a-
Combined.
Yeah, that's like the survey that they sent out and.
Yep.
But we haven't met since the last time we did an update, so it'll be next Thursday.
So there's some more.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
I'm
John.
ready.
What everyone wants.
Here we go. This is
Go.
gonna be short and sweet. There are new surveys on the ascendlebo.com site. These surveys are focused around the three key areas that have emerged as big picture topics throughout the process: mobility, engagement, and resiliency. Each topic area has its own unique survey. These surveys are focused on digging deeper into these three topics to explore insights that have come up throughout the planning process. So go to Ascend and complete these three surveys.
I have
Send
not
Lebo.
done that yet. Well, no, I certainly will. But my just initial comment is, it may, serve us well to possibly in future communications to define those three areas. Because I think to just the average person, those are fairly abstract concepts that you're trying to, like, I'm not gonna say resiliency, well, I know exactly what that's about, and I'm gonna make a comment on it. They seem pretty abstract. And then I don't know which one of that is. Somebody sent me something related, I don't know which one it would have been in, to the dog park. It was a dog park question, and I told them, I'm assuming that they just took the suggestions and brought them into the survey, but they were alarmed that it had something related to removing a dog park at Main Park was an option, but it would remove Dixon Field. It just seemed like a weird way it was phrased. But I'm sure they just took what was, hey, here's a suggestion, and maybe they didn't phrase it quite appropriately. But my bigger point was the three categories really don't drive you to
I
the survey.
see, yeah, when you look
Yeah,
at it, you
they-
just see,
They don't,
yeah.
but I will say this, once you click on them, it does give you the information, like, so.
Sure.
Mobility, it's, how can Mount Lebanon create complete, safe, comfortable, and convenient transportation network that maximizes choice and access for all users? That's kind of a little summary of that.
Yeah.
So I'm confident the other two areas have a similar opening paragraph, but I know what you're saying. I mean,
Yeah.
they are abstract or very narrow, like one word things. It
Yeah.
doesn't really tell you.
I just got it, and I'm fairly familiar with the previous stuff, and
Yeah.
and I was like, wait, I'm not sure what they're getting at here, but those were the most popular stuff.
We
I
always,
wasn't sure.
I'm sorry, we always push out the Assembly vote in our newsletter. So if you get ours and you just wanna click, I try to keep up to date links on what's going on there. I'll admit, I don't go into any explanation either. It's the Assembly vote logo. My link is like new surveys dropped and you have to click and go to see what they're about. So I hope people are finding it that way too.
I mean, honestly, the best route to take is stir something up on social media and.
There you go.
Alrighty.
I'm guessing traffic to the site. That's marketing.
That's marketing.
Should I post on Nextdoor tonight? What do they mean by like,
Yes.
where is this? And can you believe they haven't given more of a description?
Yes.
And people will start going to it.
Definitely.
Don't feel like you have to, but.
Good.
Start with the resurfacing a street that they resurfaced last year.
Okay. There you go. Stir up some.
People lose their mind.
Oh, it's funny. It is very funny what we see on there. Some of it's funny, some of it's not so funny. Okay, temporary lighting.
No real update, working with Amanda on the data collection, the field utilization and usage report that we're developing. Had a conversation with John Grogan this week regarding the evaluation of the school district, specifically the stadium turf and the upper turf in terms of utilization and usage. Also on that note was really around the rates and the charges associated with those services. And Ron Davis was part of that conversation as well. both objective to the conversation, both feel that it's valued, both understand that the turf surfaces have a life expectancy that usage over that time period has some impact, but the utilization is typically, you can't use it to the point where the life cycle's there. So I think this is kind of tied into the lighting was initially proposed as a temporary solution. We did get a permanent quote or a permanent solution quote to putting lights on 3 sides of the upper practice field, which was extremely reasonable, like unbelievably
Temporary or
reasonable.
permanent?
Yeah, so I think that the significance of the quote was shocking to the individuals that were involved. So I think shockingly low.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to lead to some continued conversations.
That's
One of the-
upper turf.
the upper turf, yeah.
Is this the same one you gave us, the same quote?
Yeah,
you gave us
general,
last
yeah,
week?
Jen, there's some
Okay.
other things there. We understand that we didn't have earlier, there is conduit pulled to certain areas. Which would reduce the impacts, we was unaware of that. We do know that the main power is there. The bigger question that Amanda and I are working on is a cost justification for the school district to make the investment based on payback. So based on the field utilization, based on increasing the cost of the usage, proposed to decrease the stadium cost to increase usage.
Yes,
And to,
yes.
and to normalize the upper practice field. I think it was like a 2.2 year return on investment for them. So then it becomes a function of funding. How do they fund it? How's it, so and so.
You're saying like 2.2 years?
Right.
Okay.
And are you gonna bring it like to the school board and present it or what's?
So right now, so Amanda and I are still finalizing the data on what the usage could be. And so trying to correlate, I think in the lower turf is like 30% usage, or the stadium turf is like a 30%,
That seems.
30%
That's-
utilization.
Yeah, that seems to be.
So we're basically taking into consideration and working with Grogan on when the stadium turf would be available for middle school and high school sports. And what that means in terms of hours. What would be a fair market value for billable aspect to say if we could capture 70% of the utilization, what would that mean in terms of revenue to the district? As well as the upper practice field to say, if you could add 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day. They were thinking 9:00 PM would be a deadline, but again, trying to figure out from like 7 to 9 or 6 to 9, if you could gain 3 hours, 5 days or 6 or 7 days a week. What does that mean in terms of increased use of sports? But then the flip back is what is that in revenue? So
Right.
one of the conversations that we have had here as a group for Shirley to share is the Seymour middle field is 15 an hour, $16 an hour
Per field.
per field.
Right.
The upper practice field is 15
I think it's also 16.
an hour, 16 an hour. And then the stadium turf is 100. So the issue is there, people are, they consume practice surfaces, and so we're trying to determine, is there a better way? So the school district is super supportive with the concept. In my words, I would say that they're not gonna look at the capital unless there's a justification of a return. I don't think that they're also they're asking for us to bring that data back to say, hey, if this is what this could do, they would then take it to the school board.
Tom, is your 2.2 ROI based on some estimated new fee, not like current fees?
So that's what we're still working through. We used an upper practice field of $50 an hour. Was the range of what we felt was still below market rate.
Yeah.
And with the increased, David, that's a discussion point. I mean, it's nothing that's been agreed upon or shown, but we use it as a kind of a
Okay.
point of where the correlation.
Okay, I
crosses.
got you.
So don't put that in writing. The correlation of where it crosses over based on increase in utilization to offset the cost. And then, the other part of it from a thing would be, would the rec department also look at increasing the cost of Dixon, Middle and Seymour to offset the replacement of those, to add to the helping towards the investment of replacing those turfs into the future. I think it's important to try to baseline cost, so there's no incentive for anyone to go
Particular
in a
field.
particular space.
Exactly.
So the numbers we threw out there were not discussed, not agreed upon. We threw it out there as kind of what we felt was below market in terms of what teams are paying elsewhere, but it would still allow that revenue to offset the investment.
Does that also include lowering the cost of the stadium turf, but increasing?
That was a second part, Shelley. That was a second part of the conversation. What they've asked for us to come back with is what is the proposal? So as we've discussed before, they don't offer an à la carte offering, right? So when you get the stadium turf, you get a janitor, you get a bathroom.
Right.
You know, so what we're saying is, hey, if the individual doesn't want, they want the platinum package, you know, you're basically paying for everything, right? So if it's a championship game at night under the lights and you want bathrooms,
And you
check,
want
check, check.
concessions.
That's what they're making the signs out of, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So-
So we're clear.
You get the
majority-
sign with the
Yeah.
package, they change the signs.
Free rental one time.
The majority of the thought is that it's not, even for games, whether there's no need for a scoreboard, I mean, again, thinking through rec. What are the real true costs? Because if they're scoreboard, you usually have access to the press box, blah, 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 blah. So, looking at that.
Yeah.
That's where my daughter.
Oh, okay.
plays.
So
No, you said
I think understanding where the current rates are compared to what they've asked us to do is come back and make a correlation report in terms of where the current rates are now. And if we put them into an area with increased participation, there's an exponential revenue gain.
Absolutely.
Like it's tens of thousands of dollars a
Absolutely.
year in increased usage for the stadium.
I'd love it, and just at some point, I would really love if you and Amanda and anybody else could come to a commission meeting, maybe in late summer before we do budget. And give an update on the field utilization report, even if you don't have
Sure.
hard numbers, even to just explain the length that you've gone to, the amount of information that you've already uncovered, and how we're trying to use the resources that we already have in the most effective and efficient way possible by adding light, by investing in turf, by adding bleachers.
I think the other thing that comes into this play too is kind of, it's way off of the lighting plan, but we've talked about the utilization of turf and what it would mean in terms of increased hours, increased usage. Turf fields healing. I mean, there's a whole, we're gathering all that data based on sports and usage to understand what that impact is.
So even if you don't have numbers to show us yet, just to kind of talk about, here's what's risen to the top, so.
And we're only it's only gonna be $30,000 for the reporter. I'm sure you're like 50 is like, hey, that's fine. Should we do 50? We'll do 50. It's ours is 30. We're gonna pay to have the sign.
That's right, because that'll just,
A ton of data, but I think it kind of a ton of data is being gathered. And I think it's really opening eyes to the problem of utilization and usage. And it goes back to, we talked to Phil and Rudy about fields being able to be put off and for weeks to repair them in the spring and fall and all the things that are not being addressed properly. So,
amazing.
yeah, so I think
Initial fines, like.
the lighting aspect would be huge too.
Absolutely, it would.
So,
That would help plant the seeds. Talk about what you do with the school district, just that report.
right, yeah.
And then I think people are just a lot easier, it's a lot easier to fund recreation and sports initiatives if people know how much work has already gone in, the research that's already gone in from these requests and recommendations.
I think the big part in all this is the research is based on Mount Lebanon.
Yeah.
Activities, so it's not a
Exactly.
third party hypothetical, you know, it's based on,
What we need, from people who care. Okay.
right, yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, The main site park plan and recreation center architectural study. Do we have any updates on that?
I have a brief one, since Stefan is not here. I'm not sure if the project team has even met yet, but Ian did share with me that he is working on the RFP and should have something for the project team to review very soon. So that's all the update that I have at this point.
Good deal, okay. New business.
Great. Any goodies?
We heard
It's
that
just
there
because
was.
you commented, right?
I don't know. if
That's why I
we-
wanted to see you. It's all from the
We were
Facebook.
told and not that we had to be excited and ready.
Haircut for this, like.
So we are ready to hear the new business you're bringing to us.
It's an issue. that
If you're
needs
not
to be
ready, then
addressed.
don't, but I thought you might. I didn't. mean
Well, I don't know how
to-
to frame other people watching.
Wait, are you
Yeah,
talking about?
you're- This is my.
The sidewalk?
It's recorded, it's, anybody can.
Well, no, so I guess I could say, yeah, so though, I didn't realize that was gonna all blow up on Facebook, but, should have. But
Informative.
everybody knows, like, there was an issue with
The sidewalks.
people put it, or the municipality put out that don't sit on the sidewalk during games, and that's typically, mostly related to high school varsity games down there. And this week, my older son plays on the team, so was playing Central Catholic, so that's a big.
Yeah.
And I believe on Monday was the instigating day. And yeah, there was a significant amount of people, more than what I've ever really seen up on this side. For whatever reason, a lot of people there, the typical reasons, sounds like everybody read the post, so I think if you read my whole post, I put it down there just, but
You did
you know,
well.
it doesn't prevent people from having their own opinions on there, so, it's, the main issue is accessibility, so most of the people out there are, I would say on Monday, were probably not from Mount Lebanon, certainly some. But also older people, like I know my mom was sitting out there. And so they actually can't access the spectator areas if you would. I mean, I have to say at a high school game, I have a 9-year-old also, so he's usually with me, and so we're going from the field over there to the batting cages, I'm walking around. I probably go over the guardrail to get to either of those spots about 9 or 10 times.
Yeah.
During the thing, certainly, but I can do that for a couple more years maybe, but, so I mean, that's a main issue, but, anyways, everybody knows the issue, so, when they, last year, I believe, when we met down there, myself, Ian McMeans and Phil Avolio and Brent Dan Miller, and so that they were looking at replacing the Dixon fence, trying to get a grant for that. And then we also looked at the Seymour fence along the sidewalk, left field of Seymour, the fence that is extended higher. And if you ever look at that, it is in a dilapidated condition. The welds, half the welds have failed. Some of the posts that are securing it to the guardrail are rusted through and broken. And then there's actually like chicken wire fence at the very top that was like, just somebody had it on there with zip ties. And then the trees are all growing through there, and so they looked at that as well and put that as, I think, as part of a proposal. That part didn't get funded through a grant, from my understanding.
That didn't get funded, the fence grant one?
I don't remember if they actually put that part in, but the Dixon outfield fence did, and
Yeah.
that's right. So that all worked out. But anyways, as part of that, we didn't come up with a finalized plan, so that would be the next step. But for that fence, there needs to be an engineering plan because of the height of it. So that's what we can do forward. But the thing that was discussed was moving the fence forward to the edge of the turf and then creating a pass through from the Seymour batting cages, parking, spectator area inside the guardrail, but then behind the fences moving forward all the way down through to middle field and the Dixon parking lot. And then if you ever look at that space, there's actually a grass area, which I think was left for drainage. It actually is about 5 or 6 feet at the batting cage end, and it expands to like 10 to 12 feet. And just kind of continues to go out. So what you could do there is in that pathway, you could create a seating space that you could still pass through and still put, I mean, you could do a variety of different things there, but at minimum, you could have a flat surface or a
So you
raised
pass
deck,
through.
and you could put your chairs down there.
Right.
And then you'd replace the fence, and then you would add, that would also put the lighting that is in center field of Seymour or right field of Middle behind a fence as well. Now it's actually in the field of play, not for high school games, they do fence it off with a temporary fence, but for the youth games. And then you would have as you got past where you needed the taller fence, you would have a secondary smaller fence that would cut off the foul area on Middle, which I don't know if you played softball there. Nobody can ever get it right, like it's fenced in, but they have a grass area, and so people sit there and then they're in play. So anyways, that would be those are the things we talked about well over a year ago, so It's something we can move
Was there-
forward. We
was
have to
there-
have an engineering plan.
Was there any discussion, which I think is something as you raised, is there any discussion about the installation of ADA stairs from the sidewalk to the?
Yeah, that was
Because
part
right
of it.
now you have to walk all the way down to the entrance and
Yeah,
then.
so that would have to be
So
something.
everyone climbs over the guardrail,
It would have to be a ramp
I
at
think would be
the
a,
far end of the batting cages and then at the back.
Right,
end,
which I would think-
Wherever it would fit.
would be an
Back end.
implied liability to make sure that that's resolved from a safety standpoint. If you're gonna force people to be on the surface and they can't get to it, that's a major issue. And I think it's true at the batting cages, and it's also true behind
Backstop.
the middle, at the backstop of middle. That
Yeah.
it's common that people climb over and go down the hill and people.
You have to either,
It's a constant,
go to the entrance to the Seymour parking lot, which is way, you're actually crossing into the same area that cars would cross into. Or you have to do the same thing on the Dixon Middle parking.
so I would think
Actually,
that.
Walking onto the entrance.
I would think from an accessibility and liability standpoint, that should be an area that should be prioritized from a safety standpoint.
Not from a Facebook standpoint.
I don't do Facebook, so I don't know.
I know, I
Now, brother.
Listen.
Out.
Oh. No, but I think it's a great point. I think it's something that,
So how do we capture that into the, or like we're recommending an architecture engineering study, or maybe we're recommending?
Yeah, well, I was going to, even before this, actually, Phil and I just talked a couple weeks ago about this, Phil and Julio. And we talked about like, well, we need to address the fence first. And like he had said previously, and at that meeting as well, that they couldn't get a quote for a fence. Because the fence is actually probably a safety thing,
Yeah.
but people just kind of you don't see it. But if you really look at it, it's, I mean, it probably.
so the issue with that,
But he said they couldn't even get like the fence, Allegheny fence, couldn't even quote them a price because they needed, because of the height it would need to be.
so
They needed these engineering drawings.
Couldn't you, like at the golf course, we have a massive
Netting.
fence. I mean, we use netting on the top. and
Yeah,
it's
that would,
been-
yes,
It's been great.
yeah, that would actually be the right way to go.
so
But
is that,
even whatever, you still have to do a level of fencing and then a netting for the
Which
extension.
is what we do.
so for
But
clarification,
what Phil said, like even whatever the fence, the lower level of fence, they still need this.
yeah,
But do you guys have the fence over at where you're talking about? You said the golf course.
Yeah.
So is there a means to?
I mean, I have to
replicate
go
or
back and pull
use study?
the, notes, drawings, whatever we had for that. I think Gateway Engineers reviewed a plan from the fencing company, if memory serves. I mean, this is going back several years, but I mean, we'll have documentation on that. I can
and
tell
yeah,
you.
the fence that's back there now, just from a clarification standpoint, from a baseball standpoint. Is there an established permanent structure for what would be classified as a home run? Or is that the fence that's in the hillside that,
It would be over the fence.
so it's, and so, and then, so there's a fence,
All right.
there's a fence, but then there's also what's above the fence? So what is
Yeah.
how are they, what do they classify as a home run?
It has to be clear all.
All over all of it
The chicken wire and everything that's at the top.
for a home run?
And the home garden fence
Right.
up there. You
Yeah.
have to clear that.
So the question is with the distance standpoint. Is that within,
What's that,
is
you drying up?
that a high school? I mean, from a distance height,
So it's short for high school, but it's within
Regulation.
the realms of possibility. So moving it forward a little bit. And actually adding it to the height that it should be or was at one point.
so could you have
Fine.
could you have a 8-foot
Adding a
fence?
net is the-
And you have an 8-foot fence and then put a 20-foot net behind it?
Yeah, you can do whatever. Yeah.
Home run, but we're talking.
And objectively, it's preventing balls from hitting cars and traffic on Cedar.
Yeah, but I think the priority would be old people falling over. failing.
But yeah, but I mean, that's what the intent
Yeah,
is.
it doesn't happen. I mean, with home runs there, any frequency. You know, maybe one every other game or something, every third game, so. That's not a
So-
big deal, but you would have to, you would need to address. If you're gonna move the fence forward to create a lane for seating and. movement
Sure, it's
between
moving
areas.
areas, yeah.
It would have to be at least as high as it is now, or maybe a little bit higher.
So all spectators would watch through a fence in that idea, that'd be the idea,
Or not.
or a net.
So Mindy, we've talked about,
Yeah, the secondary, thing to do there as well is at least on the home side, which would be the batting cage side, is to replace slightly relocate the bleachers and replace them with an elevated bleacher system. So which the bleachers would start at, I mean, whatever, there's a variety of those you could get, but like say, let's say 6 feet off the ground. And so you would have a much better, because
Visual experience.
it's terrible. You can't see unless you're on the far end of the bleacher. You can't actually see beyond the dugout to see the home plate area. And you're limited because there's, access for the drains and all that stuff that's underneath the turf and around that area farther up. So I mean, there's some limitations. So moving it up would be, that again is going to be another cost. So if you're looking at accessibility and wanting to get grants, fundraising as well. I mean, that's why having getting these plans moved forward. And that was what I was going to do, was talk with Ian McLean's about what they did with the Dixon fence initially and just kind of follow the roadmap of that. Move that forward. And then once we have a plan in place, and this is what we did with the batting cages, we got something on paper and pictures and then when you're able to fundraise a little bit in part and, maybe get some fundraising, get a grant and the municipality funds appropriated.
We have talked in the past, I don't think we've ever, as a group, she's like,
Don't tell me. I don't
so
think about this.
we've talked in the past about retained budgets for purposes of risk in the community. We've talked about, are there allocations of money within the community budget for unexpected things that come up and happen? I think based on the significance of what we've talked about, based on risk,
Yeah, we have funding.
this should be
for
something that,
projects.
there should be something that I would think that the commission should look at to reduce the risk of anyone that's there, and then potentially look at engaging a resolution to parties involved, softball, baseball, community, whatever, softball, soccer, field across, and say, hey, we're trying to do this collectively. But I think it would warrant a conversation to address the safety issue first.
I think the timing is really important, that we start to talk about it now so that we have the plan decided. And then when we go ahead and replace the turf in, what do you think, David, 2025?
That's probably a good guess.
2025, which we would fund next year. That would mean we'd be funding it next year for 2025. We want to have our solid plans in place, or maybe some of that work that could be done before then too.
Yeah, and just so you know, this is technically on our list.
Right.
Yeah.
1-4.
And what's it called?
It's 1-4, so enhanced field and spectator areas.
Okay. Okay, I didn't know, I saw that on there, but I didn't know what it was.
And then obviously with lighting, wherever the stanchion, whatever needs to happen with lighting would be addressed within the plan of the fence and the walkway and the everything else. Right, I mean. Yeah.
Well, it's not, excuse me, the way I'm interpreting it, it's, even though it's under, I lost it.
One is light, one, two is turf.
So it doesn't appear to be in the top 10. to me.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's under.
Because when they put it in there, there was no social media.
It's
Right.
Yeah,
Number 4.
it's that same section of.
So,
Wait,
well,
But
it's
Yeah.
for, but it's not, it doesn't get its own overall rank, so it's unranked in my book.
Number 10, not ranked.
the enhancement field.
So look at the first column, that's the overall rank. I think that's just an order number under that category.
Right.
So we
So,
want to change that.
well, that's why I'm bringing it up. If you want to reprioritize something, now would be a good time.
So
Make it number 1.
my thought is so one of the things that we always battle with, right? Is the stuff that's projected, put it into a budget, it's gonna be 2 to 3 years out versus this needs to be done now. So I think that's two conversations.
Yeah.
When we look at this thing, I think in kind of the same context, if we're looking at the turf at middle in Seymour, it ought to include lighting,
Right.
drainage.
Spectator,
fence.
fence,
I mean, it should be one lump sum.
Yes, right,
Right,
absolutely.
should be one lump sum conversation.
So that's another thing then, it could just be
Right.
moved up with. Turf replacement and lights and add, you know, enhanced spectating areas.
Safety,
Yeah.
security, stairs, seating,
Yes.
Let's do, I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
that. I'm not a voting member. I love that.
because if it's separate, it's gonna
You're
be.
gonna be ultimately though, well, maybe.
I love that, but the problem is that I want to make sure whatever study needs to happen before that.
And that goes back to the things we talked about, like, you know,
I'll do that.
yeah.
Okay, so we can do that separate, we can just.
Well, and it could also, I mean, when we go to do lighting and replace turf, there's gonna be engineering. There's no
Yeah.
reason why they couldn't. It's not like this is gonna be some super complex.
Right,
Gateway could crank this out
yeah,
as part of that project.
okay, so let's just really put a lot of
Yeah,
words.
David, I think you have your absolute must-haves, you have your wish list, like, hey, it'd be great to put a full functioning bathroom at the Seymour side. The field, is that realistic? Maybe not, I don't know, but if the turf's dug up and you're gonna put plumbing in, I mean, we should have that comprehensive plan of who's a part of that
Yeah.
discussion. When we look at that surface, everything should be on the table.
Ian, were you hoping to get the fencing in the
first.
path done prior to lights and replacement?
Yeah.
I did not have a timeline. The reason I had brought it up a few weeks ago when I met with Bill. Because they had done the Dixon field and we had talked about that previously as part of that. And that's where we talked about, we needed these engineering plans. So my thought was very similar to what Mindy is saying is, let's get something on paper. So that it can move forward if possible, if it's a fundraising thing, if it's a grant. We have to apply for sooner than later, because you're not, at the earliest, you wouldn't do something like this. Even if it was separate from a turf replacement, until the field use would dictate, allow you to do that. Which wouldn't be till the fall at the earliest, but then it probably not financially.
I'm more asking like you saying, I'll go ahead and do the engineering part of the fence, the path,
No, I'm not gonna.
not you, but I
I'm
mean.
gonna Get somebody to do it,
I didn't mean you, I meant,
or at least get a process in place to figure out how to do that.
but with the
I think
with them
it's-
having the knowledge that ultimately the plan is bigger than just this path and this fence. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna start moving fence into the turf, I mean, that's gonna impact
Well,
the
the-
turf itself and so.
I mean,
on.
obviously, I'm not an engineer, but I mean, potentially you could do something without disturbing the turf, because there is the section of what I assumed was left for drainage. It's
Oh, the
just
actual grass, yeah.
and there's the edge of the
That's where they're
turf.
supposed to keep the chairs.
And
That's where they're
in our
supposed to be.
initial look at it, it would just, you would bring it up towards the edge of the turf. You would still be in, but I mean,
Oh.
there could be potential that you wouldn't
I
disturb
forgot
that.
that.
So
there
you-
was
Yeah.
that
Well,
grass
So it would
there.
probably make ultimate sense to
Below
reconfigure
There's grass.
the edges, which this would be.
Yeah,
When you were doing the
okay,
returfing.
that's something, yeah, and
But
maybe,
it probably could be done without that, but you would have not have use of part of the fields.
all right, well, that's definitely something Gateway's gonna need to look
Yeah.
at, but yeah.
Yeah, so my plan before it's posted was to actually just start with talking with Ian about what the process they finalized for the Dixon fence and go
Yeah.
with Phil. from there.
And I think you can still do that. But for prioritization's sake, I think it still makes sense to put it up with the others.
Yes.
If it gets done before then great, but
Right,
but if not, it's still number one.
yeah.
I think this should be the turf replacement package.
Yeah, exactly.
The platinum.
Exactly.
The turf package. It's platinum now.
2 sides on each side.
Yeah.
What else do you want to throw in? It's platinum.
No sides. It's extra.
We're gonna have an escalator take you down from.
Is this in Mount Lebanon?
A moving walkway from the end of the parking lot.
And one of those, like, car vending machine, so we can stack the cars up a little bit higher too.
What a tractable dome,
Might as well take
that
it.
whole.
Yeah.
Come on.
We digress.
Absolutely.
All right.
Someone needs to
Wonderful.
know that.
Okay, all right.
We're breaking this.
Thank you for bringing all that.
Thanks. Announcements.
I have none.
Okay, I am
No announcements.
3 minutes over. I guess we're adjourning.
You.
Everyone okay to adjourn at 9:13?
Sure.
Yes.
I tried to hold this.
No, you did amazing.
Great.
You did great, thanks.
Well done.
Okay, we have a May meeting, but no June, July meeting, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Did we adjourn?
Yeah, we.
Okay.
We're good.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Did you have
And
North Catholic have PTSD from